Hi, I'm Ted Nelson. This is just an enumeration of my main personal publications over the last 60 years, so if I refer to one of them in another video, I don't have to find it and drag it out. I've published lots of articles in journals and books and magazines. There's an excellent bibliography by Henry Lowood. But there are some things I've published on my own, for the fun of it, and so as not to have to persuade some publisher that they can make money with a project it's hard to explain. Self-publishing is honorable. It was good enough for William Blake and Lawrence of Arabia. It's good enough for me, but the so-called legitimate publishers want to make it sound improper. I come from a family of self-publishers. My grandmother and great-grandfather published their own poetry, novels, and whatnot. In high school, I edited the school paper. The previous editor hadn't understood linotype. He would make changes at the beginning of a paragraph, meaning resetting the whole paragraph at 10 cents a line. I would make changes at the end of a paragraph. But in college, I had a chance to self-publish, and I never looked back. It was 1956. This was before the Xerox copier, but they had just introduced small photo offset presses that would print on legal-sized paper or 8.5 by 11, and I figured out how to use them. I was indignant that the college literary magazine was getting $800 for their publication. I figured out how to publish a little magazine for $35, and here it is. This was Nothing, the first issue I co-published with my roommate Len Corwin, and illustrations commissioned largely from Russ Ryan. And Ryan was very clever. He was associated with something called the Dada Club, which I instigated. And lots of little poems and things people had submitted. And rather dense. But here's a piece by Peter Shickley, the Peter Shickley, who later became well known as P.D.Q. Bach. Here's a piece by Koichi Tsunoda, who later became a vice president of Sony. And here's a fold-out. This was when Playboy was introducing fold-out, so I wanted to have a fold-out. Printing on 8.5 by 14 was easy. More Russ Ryan stuff. And finally the back cover. So that was Nothing number 1. The following year, Len was no longer at college, so I published on my own Nothing number 2, and there's the cover. That was meant to be the cover. We see a man walking by the side of the road. And then, but it was the grand phallic issue, so it was lengthwise, 8.5 by 11. One side was a sort of cruddy red, and the other side was a cruddy green, again with illustrations commissioned from Russ Ryan. And then later in that year, this was then spring of 1956, I was 19, 60 years ago, I published this one, Nothing number 3, of which I'm extremely proud. It was done on, the trick was cutting 8.5 by 11 paper diagonally, so it was kite-shaped. My friend the printer had no idea what I was doing. He was absolutely astounded when we put together the first one. So the idea is it unfolded like this, and you had to keep rotating it as you turn the pages. There was a piece called Waitin' for Pogo. I can't quite see it. The screen has gone dark. There we go. Piece called Waitin' for Pogo here, and which was a script for a Pogo cartoon. No one had time to illustrate. And various other cartoons. This one got the pubic hair thing got it banned from the mails because I asked it to post stuff. And Waiting for Pogo went on and on. Oh, there was the beginning of it, sorry. And then there was some other wonderful cartoons by Ryan. And finally, what some people have called one of the first underground cartoons of the 60s, except, of course, this was 1957. So that was Nothing number 3, and I'm very proud of it still. So that was 57. Later that year, in the fall of 57, my junior year, I wrote what I believe was the first rock musical. That is, I think it had something like 9 rock numbers. It ran as scheduled for 2 nights at Swarthmore College. And unfortunately, the cast was bigger than the audience. But anyway, here's the CD. It was originally a long-playing record, but a friend of mine actually reissued it as a CD recently. And here it is on the Truly Zorch label. This was again before silly record labels were well known. My friend Terry Adams of NRBQ wants to issue another record on the Truly Zorch label. So anyway, that was the music for it. The program for it, again with an illustration by Russ Ryan, was as big a production as the show itself. I printed many posters, but this is my favorite. Then, my senior year, I had a weekly column which I collected as my first book. It was officially called We Need a Sociology Department, not because this was about the field of sociology, but rather because Swarthmore needed a sociology department. And putting that in the newspaper every week was a way of campaigning. It was humorous columns about life in an intellectual, seamy, squalid, sex-starved college, and it was actually reprinted. The columns were reprinted at Reed College without my permission, and it's now available at lulu.com under the title Life, Love, College, etc. Okay, pause. Then I went to graduate school, and then I discovered that computers the interactive screen would be the new home of the human race, which very few people realized at that time. I think maybe I was the only person to think that in 1960 and 61. And in 63, I got a job at the University of Illinois, and that gave me time to write this book, which was very influential, Computer Lib, and the other side was Dream Machine. The other side was Dream Machines, which was essentially about computer graphics and all the things that interactive screens would give us. And the type was extremely small because I kept adding stuff and making the paste stuff bigger and bigger. Once again, nobody knew what I was doing, and putting it together on the dining room, on the kitchen table, took a year and 3/4. And it sold 50,000 copies and was extremely influential. It was the so-called Bible of the Homebrew Computer Club, which I never heard about in California. And Steve Wozniak had said it inspired the Apple I. And it sold $50,000, but didn't get me the money I needed because I was cheated by my distributors. Okay, so that was Computer Lib. And how would you convince a conventional publisher to publish something like this, even if you could explain what the concept of liberating computers was in 1973 or 4, let alone the idea of having an illustration which wrapped around to the other side, saying, where is it? The foot on this side saying something is afoot. This was about the time computer kits came out the following year, and I tried to start a computer store, getting in on that craze. I got some partners. I advertised for partners, not the way to start a company. And we started the Itty Bitty Machine Company in Evanston, Illinois, and I did their catalog. This was when buying a board to make an 8K memory was exciting. And so here was the broadside catalog, which I did. All kinds of advertising for the different boards, for the different computer frames that were available and the different boards that were available. And I introduced various characters, Itty and Bitty, the computer clowns, and Caplan's computer and whatnot, but the company didn't go anywhere. However, on the other side, we had my painting, Computers Arise. That was in the window of many computer stores and on many dorm room walls. The following year, or maybe a year or two later, anyway, soon after, in 1977, I published this book, home computer revolution, which had no impact whatever, but in which I predicted the downfall of IBM. Everyone laughed. They're still going, but not where they used to be. In 1980, continuing with my project Xanadu, which was the main work of my life so far, I published a book about worldwide hypertext publishing, which I expected to be on my model, which was not merely jump links as on the World Wide Web, but visible connections between pages. You can see that in some of my other videos. Anyway, so here it was, literary machines, and with lots of nice illustrations inside. Mainly done by hand, hand illustrated. So that was the first edition of Literary Machines, which I'm not calling the Humanist edition. The real first edition is a real collectible. It had silver mylar cover with white paint. Marvelous. Later, after the Xanadu team had put together the marvelous construction, which is Tumblr addressing, and the XU88 model of Xanadu, also called Xanadu Green or Udenex Green, which is open source, which is based on Tumblr addressing, a brilliant system worked out by Roger Gregory, Mark Miller, Stuart Green, Roland King, and Air Hill, but under my direction, and with 3 enfilade structures. Enfilade is a structure I invented in 1970, but they enhanced it with new enfilades and general enfilade theory. And all this is partly explained in the technical edition of Literary Machines, which I put together in '87 with the help of Lauren Sarno, who's now my wife. Literary Machines went through a number of editions in other countries. I believe Finland and Italy. The Italian company conveniently went bankrupt, so I didn't get paid. Here's the Japanese edition of Literary Machines. So let's see. 2008, I published this one, which is available at lulu.com, or I think it's available on Amazon. Geeks Bearing Gifts. Yes, that is a picture of Bill Gates under arrest in Albuquerque, but nobody knows what he was under arrest for. The records have disappeared. And here is an autobiography I wrote in 2010, Possiplex, which is largely about, well, it's an autobiography. Because I didn't have parallel pages visibly connected in the hypertext that I believe in, instead I used fancy typography to connect the various threads of the exposition. And James Burke, the author of Connection, said, I read it in one non-stop surge because I couldn't put it down. That's available from Amazon. Not available from Amazon is The Scene Machine, published a couple of years ago, which is basically my patent application for a 3-dimensional ray tracing system that I applied for a patent for in 1972, and of course didn't have the money to follow through on it. But it had a lot of fancy stuff in it, and it's very amusing to those who are technically interested. And finally, my most recent book, Philosophy of Hypertext, which is my PhD thesis from Keio University in Japan. The degree was granted in 2002. Here is the diploma. But the thesis itself is in English. 340 pages. So those are my publications. Another one I need to mention is this, Intertwingled, which is the from a conference called Intertwingled, the Work and Influence of Ted Nelson, held at Chapman University in 2014. There are lots of other collectibles. I put out hundreds of brochures and handouts and premature announcements. But I don't have a copy of Selected Papers, which is what persuaded John Walker of Autodesk to fund the Xanadu project in 1988. And I don't have an instance of the lovely silver-winked Xanadu cap that we were distributing in the 1970s. But those are my major publications, just for reference there. Thank you.